2026 Monaco Grand Prix race notes. Sabrina's race notes. Number 1. Kimi Antonelli. Full stop. This was a complete performance. Pole. Led every lap. Fastest lap. And he nailed the restart, which has been his weakness this season, and did it all under pressure and made it look non-existent. If you weren't watching closely, you might have missed how dominant that actually was. 5 consecutive wins, 5 consecutive poles, the youngest winner of the Monaco Grand Prix, and from what Toto has said after the race, both drivers are free to race for the title. That is an early telling sign about what could become a fascinating intra-team championship fight. I keep coming back to how he is being handled. Toto has been deliberate about moving away from hard pressure management with Kimi, and the results are speaking for themselves. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. How you manage a young driver directly affects what you get from them. We are watching that argument play out in real time, race by race. Number 2, George Russell, when the season turns against you. I want to be clear about something before drawing any conclusions about what happened to George this season. It is not a performance failure. Canada was his race to win. The power unit let him down. In Monaco, a potential software glitch generated a pit lane speeding penalty through no fault of the driver. And then a communication breakdown during the safety car stop meant the penalty was not served correctly. He said it himself. The whole season could look totally different. He's right. A mechanical failure in Canada, a penalty caused by a potential software issue in Monaco, compounded by a team execution error. He could have had at least 2 more victories. The math is not complicated. And yet, I can't ignore what he said after qualifying, that the 2026 Mercedes might be moving away from his driving style. That's a more worrying admission than any of the bad luck. It's one thing to lose points to circumstances outside your control. It's another to feel the car drifting from what works for you. I don't know how much of this current gap to Kimi is misfortune and how much is something more structural. But that question is now out in the open, and it matters. Toto says he's not worried about George. He says you don't unlearn how to drive, and I believe that. George is a clever, experienced racer. But there is a difference between bad luck and 68 points down. Both things can be true simultaneously. I also noticed how Toto framed his pit stop accountability. Clearly our mistake. That's good leadership. It doesn't change the result, but it matters that it was said. I want to raise the car style question with the guys. Is the 2026 Mercedes genuinely moving away from George, or is this noise from a rough patch? And what does the championship picture look like if things do balance out? Number 3, Lewis Hamilton, Monaco, in a beautiful pairing. I'm genuinely pleased for Lewis. 2nd consecutive podium for Ferrari, his 8th Monaco podium, tying Ayrton Senna's record. He and Monaco are a beautiful pairing, and there is no question in my mind that this has been an encouraging stretch for him. What struck me is how differently his penalty situation unfolded compared to George's. Same infringement type, pit lane speeding. Hamilton served his during a safety car stop with no net position loss. Russell's became a compounding disaster. That contrast speaks to experience, composure, and team communication working the way it should. Who would have thought I'd be thinking Ferrari was doing better than Mercedes on any of those elements? That said, I wait to see how he and Ferrari fare in Barcelona before letting my optimism grow. I've been cautious about Ferrari early season momentum before, and this circuit suits Lewis in a way that not all of them will. Number 4, Charles Leclerc, when the sporting gods won't yield. Ugh, how true it is that his list of Monaco woe now substantially outweighs his list of Monaco successes. Brake problems throughout the weekend, a barrier at the back in qualifying, and then running third, crashing at the final corner on the safety car restart. What makes it worse is that even if he had been on pole, the brake problems may well have caused this outcome anyway. Sometimes the sporting gods just won't yield. Ferrari's 100% scoring record in 2026 ended in Monaco, something worth noting as the season develops. Number 5, Max Verstappen. The qualifying lap was the story. When everyone had written off Red Bull at Monaco, Max walked in and put himself P2 behind Antonelli. That was a delight to watch. The gap he had to the expected frontrunners was a genuine statement. And on a circuit where he had initially joked he would need a new back to get through the weekend, to deliver the lap was remarkable. The power unit failure on the formation lap was gutting. For him, for the team, and frankly for the rest of us who wanted to see what he might have done. But Red Bull has confirmed this was his first power unit of the season, already planned to be replaced after Monaco. Barcelona brings a fresh unit, and Verstappen himself has said that Barcelona is the real test, more high-speed corners, which have been their weak point. My instinct is that with the new hardware and the changes that they've been working on, we will see something more representative of their true pace there. Number 6. Isaac Hadjar, resilience that earns its result. Crashed in FP1, lost track time, fought back to pace, battled power unit problems through the race. Red Bull attempted to change spark plugs during the red flag. The FIA intervened. Red Bull stopped, the car was cleared, started and finished in the same condition. A lot had to fall his way to reach the podium, and it did. But what struck me was how he drove in the face of constant adversity. He had every reason to crumble, and he didn't. That is a driver telling you something about himself. I am consistently impressed with his resilience. This is his first Red Bull podium, second career podium overall. I hope this is a turning point after the difficult stretch in Miami and Canada. I genuinely do not want him to spiral, because what I saw in the first 3 races of the season suggest real potential, and Monaco reminded me of that. One thing I want to flag, and I'll raise this with the guys. Would Red Bull have known that changing spark plugs was outside what's permitted during a red flag stoppage? That felt like an odd moment of confusion for a team at that level. Number 7. Racing Bulls, homework and well-earned luck. Both cars had problems before the race even started. Alan Permain said so. And yet, Racing Bulls walked away with their biggest points haul since their AlphaTauri days at the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. What a stat. This is the kind of result you earn through smart homework and taking your opportunities when they arrive. Just like that, Alpine has competition for 5th in the constructors' standings. This team has quietly been one of the more interesting stories of this early season. Number 8. Pierre Gasly and Alpine, robbed on the road, constrained by the rules. My heart says it isn't right. Pierre finished 3rd on the road. 2 speeding penalties dropped him to 7th. He was in the media pen processing a podium being taken from him in real time, and it was gut-wrenching to watch. My legal brain says the rules are rules, and this is largely binary. What makes it more complicated is that race control apparently warned teams before the race about exactly this risk. That cutting the pit lane entry slightly would register as speeding under the average speed measurement system. If that warning was given, the team and drivers had notice. From what I understand, the system measures average speed using timing loops embedded in the track. When drivers cut the entry, the distance covered is shorter, but the timing is the same, making average speed appear higher. The new pit lane configuration, added to accommodate Cadillac as the 11th team, appears to have contributed. Multiple drivers from multiple teams were caught, all at margins under 1/10 kilometer per hour. Lewis Hamilton, who was also penalized, believes the line he took was the same one he has used for years. Alpine has requested a right of review. The test requires significant and relevant new evidence unavailable to stewards at the time. Their chances are understood to be small. And from what I can see, the FIA discussed the configuration change with the teams before the event. That notice is a problem for Alpine's case, however unfair the outcome feels. I also want to say directly, I don't understand why Alpine chose not to tell Pierre about the penalties while he was still racing. He found out after the checkered flag. Whatever the team's reasonings, that decision made an already painful situation worse for a driver who deserved better communication. I want to discuss the pit lane measurement system with the guys and whether the configuration change to accommodate Cadillac created a problem no one fully anticipated. Number 9. The Aduo verdict, the most important thing that happened this weekend. The biggest story of the Monaco weekend did not happen on track. It happened in the Motorhomes on Sunday, when the FIA sent a one-page note to all manufacturers with the outcome of the first ADUO analysis. From what I understand, and I want to discuss this further with the guys, ADUO stands for Additional Development and Upgrade Opportunities. It is a catch-up mechanism built into the 2026 engine regulations. The idea: if a manufacturer's power unit is measured as being behind the benchmark, they get extra development allowances and test bench hours to close the gap. The further behind, the more allowance. The verdict: Red Bull is the benchmark. Mercedes gets one upgrade this year and one in 2027. Ferrari, Audi, and Honda each get 2 upgrades this year and 2 in 2027. Here's what I keep coming back to. A system specifically designed to help struggling manufacturers catch up to Mercedes has instead allowed Mercedes, which has been dominant on track all season, to get additional development allowances. Red Bull, whose internal combustion engine is judged the best in the field, is now locked in as the benchmark with no ability to improve. And critically, Mercedes can hold those upgrades until it chooses to deploy them, meaning Red Bull could remain hamstrung for longer than anyone expected. I want to be honest about my limitations here. The technical details of how exactly this is measured and what it means in practice are something I need the guys to walk me through. But the political implications feels clear even to a layperson. A mechanism intended to help the chasing pack catch up has potentially done the opposite. And what I have read, even the FIA itself has acknowledged it might be open to revising how performance is measured going forward. There are apparently 2 regulation proposals on the table for 2027. Ferrari and Audi's positioning on which route to take may now shift in light of the verdict. The political movement in Barcelona will be worth closely watching. I plan to ask Joe to walk us through what ADUO is, what the verdict means, and why it matters. Number 10. The gearbox story, McLaren versus Mercedes. Something I flagged from my research this week that I think is worth understanding because it sounds like jargon, but actually reveals a real strategic choice. McLaren and Mercedes share the same power unit, but they exploit it fundamentally differently through their gearbox designs. From what I understand, McLaren uses shorter gear ratios and Mercedes uses longer ones. Shorter ratios give stronger acceleration off the line and out of slow corners, which explains why McLaren's starts have looked strong despite sharing the same engines. Longer ratios favor high-speed straights by keeping the engine in a better rev range for extended periods. That is part of why Mercedes tends to pull away on tracks with long straights like Canada, while McLaren can match or beat them on shorter acceleration zones. Teams must commit to their gear ratios at the start of the season, but this year's regulations allow a one-time change. McLaren's Andrea Stella has said they won't use it. They believe their current setup is a net positive across the calendar. That's a team betting that enough of the remaining circuits will suit their philosophy. For me, what this illustrates is that shared components don't mean shared strategy. Both teams are making different bets about what kind of season lies ahead. Mercedes is betting it can stay competitive everywhere. McLaren is betting that the tracks that suit them will be enough. I find that genuinely interesting, and I want our listeners to understand that this isn't about engine power, it's about philosophy. I plan to ask Dick to walk us through what this actually means and why it matters for how each team approaches the rest of the season. Number 11. The 2026 regulations. Still open, still skeptical. Monaco seems to be a track layout that largely removed the yo-yo racing that dominated earlier races. Drivers could attack more naturally. Max Verstappen said it himself. He finally felt like himself in the car again. His father was blunter. This is how Formula One should be. Not deliberately taking corners slower, just flat out. Lewis Hamilton called it probably one of his least favorite cars around Monaco, citing reduced downforce and lower mechanical grip compared to earlier eras. Fernando Alonso was the most direct of all. There's nothing to be done. It's what we have until 2030. And I think his point, that ongoing discussions about changing the engine for next year and the chassis for 2030 essentially confirm that dissatisfaction with the current package is widespread, is close to the truth. Where I land, the 2026 product seems to be very circuit dependent. Monaco calmed things down, but that was partly because of the track's characteristics, not because the regulations have been resolved. I wonder if the closing speed incidents that generated safety concern in Japan have truly been addressed. I'm also wondering if the tweaks introduced in Miami helped. Even so, helped is not the same as fixed. I remain open. I remain skeptical. Both things continue to be true. Number 12. On gatekeeping, growing audiences, and who Formula One is for. For those who watch Formula One social media, the Brundle and Kardashian interaction during Brundle's pre-race grid walk got a lot of attention. I want to say something about it because I think there is a real conversation underneath the noise. And I want to be clear from the outset. Kim Kardashian is the catalyst for this talking point, but she is far from the only person who has behaved this way. This is not about her specifically. It is about a pattern. I don't think celebrities owe anyone a grid walk interview. Kim Kardashian was there to support someone she cares about. Whether or not she recognized a particular broadcaster is not a measure of her worthiness to be there. And I think the framing of that question, who deserves to be near Formula One, who passes the test, who gets to decide, reveals something about gatekeeping within the sport that is worth naming. The pattern tends to target American women specifically, and I find that perplexing because the American market is a market the sport has actively pursued and genuinely needs. To marginalize the very audience you're courting is not a strategy, it is a contradiction. And beyond commercial logic, there is a historical irony worth noting. The continental European establishment did not always welcome the British teams and personalities who now feel entitled to set the terms of access. The sport moved forward by expanding, not by protecting what already existed. I also want to say something personal because I think it matters in this context. There are many of us, women, Americans, people who came to the sport recently and came to it deeply, who bring genuine analytical engagement, genuine passion, and genuine respect for what Formula One is and what it has been. The assumption that we cannot or will not or should not be taken seriously as voices in this conversation is one I find puzzling, and I hope the sport continues to move past it. To think someone cannot come to appreciate Formula One deeply because they haven't had the opportunity until recently is frankly the same logic that was used against others before. We should know better by now. That said, I want to be clear about something. The Monaco grid walk is one of the special moments in this sport, and I think anyone who is granted access to it, regardless of where they come from or how they came to be here, owes the moment a degree of engagement and grace. And here's what makes the pattern of refusal so difficult to understand or defend. Contrast it with what we have also seen, the Crown Prince of Bahrain, literally royalty, and someone who has no obligation whatsoever to pause for a broadcaster in the middle of that chaos. Made time to speak civilly to Martin. He understood the assignment. And from Miami, Colin Farrell, who, as an Irishman, likely grew up with Formula One as part of his world, had a genuine, enthusiastic conversation that was a pleasure to watch. Both of them showed what is possible when someone shows up to the moment with curiosity and warmth instead of deflection. What brings me back to the pattern, because here is what I find genuinely puzzling. Access to the Monaco grid does not come easily. It does not come to civilians. It comes to people who have built something, a platform, a following, a brand significant enough that someone with the power to grant that access decided it was worth their while to do so. That is not nothing. That is years of work or extraordinary talent or both. The person standing on that grid has, by definition, already demonstrated they understand how visibility works. They have already proven they know how to build and protect a public image, which makes the decision to blow off a civil question from one of the sport's most recognizable broadcasters not just a fumble, it is shocking. They should know better. Of all the people in the world who should understand the calculus of a viral moment, it is someone who has built their name on exactly that calculus. There's also a practical dimension that frankly puzzles me as well. Martin Brundle has been doing this for decades. His audience is the audience you are trying to reach, or should be. If you're serious about what you are building, that is. Engaging him warmly and intelligently, even briefly, is the kind of moment that travels. It becomes a clip. It becomes a story. It becomes the reason a new audience finds you. Flowing him off is also the kind of moment that travels, just in a very different direction. And for anyone whose presence in these spaces is still being established, the cost of that second kind of moment is higher than it might appear in the instant it happens. The math is not complicated. It should not need explaining to someone at that level. And if real accountability belongs anywhere, it is with whoever arranged the access and failed to prepare the person they brought. If you are bringing someone into a culture that is not their own, you brief them. You explain who the key figures are, what the rituals mean, how to show up well. That is the minimum standard of good hosting. Failing to do that is not a small oversight. It is a statement about how seriously you take both the opportunity and the person you brought with you. Now, I will say this directly because I think it needs to be said. The frequent offenders in this pattern tend to be my fellow Americans, and that matters to me personally because it does not help. It feeds exactly the narrative that gatekeepers use to justify keeping us at arm's length. So to my fellow Americans, we need to do better. We have to understand that every one of these moments is seen and that it reflects on all of us who are trying to be taken seriously in this space. And to everyone else, please do not let a handful of bad interactions define how you see all of us. Do not paint an entire audience with a broad stroke because of the behavior of a few. The Americans who love this sport, really love it, study it, argue it, lose sleep over it, are not represented by those moments. We are here and we are paying attention. The grid walk is not a backdrop. It is not content. It is a ritual with history and meaning. Showing up to it, really showing up, is part of what earns the right to be there. And frankly, it is the easiest thing in the world to get right.